Ladies and gentlemen, recently I traveled to Paris, France. And in Paris, I was a commentator, I was a media personality, I was on site, on camera talent for chess.com for the first ever live Speeches Championship finale, which features Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Alireza Firouzja, and Hans Niemann. And when I was there, I was interviewing all the players beforehand. And it was pretty wild. In today's video, the first thing that I'm going to do is give you my thoughts, which I haven't really shared fully just yet, about the explosive Hans Niemann interview, which is the name of the YouTube video, and also the results of the event, the fallout of the event, and what this could mean for the future of chess. Sometimes I like to make these videos where there are no chess moves. If you care to hear my perspective on my position in the ecosystem of chess and what this could mean for the future of the game. Before we jump into all of this, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, 80,000 Hours. 80,000 Hours is a nonprofit that helps people have a positive impact with their career. Now you may be wondering, why does this exist and why is it important? Well, most folks work 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, for 40 years. That's 80,000 hours, and that is a long time. And thus, it's your biggest opportunity to make a difference, which is why it's worth planning. And you don't have to be a doctor, teacher, charity worker, or even a chess YouTuber to make some sort of positive impact in the world. There are many career paths where your impact could potentially be even higher, some that you may not even be aware of just yet. And over the last 10 years, 80,000 Hours has worked alongside academics at the University of Oxford, looking for the best available evidence on what it takes to have a fulfilling career. And after reviewing over 60 studies on what makes a dream job, they think that the best available evidence suggests that you can't just follow the most common advice, like look for a high-paying job and maybe one that isn't too stressful. Generic advice is okay, but it doesn't always hold up. So what does? Well, the free 80,000 Hours in-depth career guide. If you go to 80,000hours.org/Gotham, you can check out this free in-depth career guide, and it'll help you learn for what makes a high-impact career, help you get new ideas for impactful paths, and make a new plan based on what you've learned and how to put it into action. Everything they provide is free. They're a nonprofit, and their only goal is to help you find a fulfilling, high-impact career. Now let's get back to the video. Okay, hello. It's me, again. The first thing that we are going to do in today's video is I'm going to show you a, kind of crappy outline of what we're going to talk about. I don't know why this bullet point is here. We're going to talk about Hans Niemann, thoughts on Speeches Championship 2024. Of course, Hans Niemann, that's what we're going to start with. Am I biased? We're going to talk about a little bit about the report. Then we're going to talk about the results in Paris and what's next. And then we're going to talk about everything else. And of course, we will have a little moment. We talk about Vladimir Kramnik. So basically, let's start with Hans Niemann. When I went to Paris, I knew that I was going to interview all the players. I was going to talk to them. I had questions there already. Some were going to be fun segments, like we were going to solve blindfolded chess puzzles with some of the players. We solved them with 3 of the players. We also were going to do a segment about your mobile phone, like what apps do you use and how much screen time do you have. We managed to do that with Magnus, Hikaru, and with Firouzja, because the earlier part of their interview was about 15-20 minutes, and then the other segment was also about 15-20 minutes. We didn't manage to get to it with Hans because the interview was supposed to be 30 minutes total, like the others. It went 46 minutes, and then there was a press conference, so we weren't able to get into that. I also do not know if he would have agreed. Now, before I react to certain points of the interview was fascinating. So it was filmed on a couch, and there was a camera basically where you are. You see, you are like the camera. We had a couple of cameras on us, but at the same time, there were folks there filming for secret projects that I can't talk about. When Hans came for the interview, there was double the amount of cameras as normal, which was already a pretty big deal. It was a fascinating deal. And, if you go to YouTube, you will see that he's given an interview. He had given an interview right before the Speeches Championship, and it was this one. It was the full interview with Naroditsky, and it was after he won the quarterfinals match against, and you'll notice that I've watched the entire thing, and this one was intense. But Naroditsky was quite good at hearing everything Hans had to say, and then sort of kind of rolling with the punches, and they went back and forth on a couple of things, and you can watch this one if you'd like. And so I was expecting maybe something similar, but again, I wasn't really interested in putting Hans on the spot or asking him about the chess.com report or any of that stuff. What's said has been said, and I was ready to talk about his event. That's not really what happened, though. We covered a lot of subjects, but we sort of went in circles at some points. I made, a couple of bullet points here, which are my level of bias in covering Hans, the chess.com report, and so on. I will say, though, the Hans Niemann interviews do quite well. 665,000 views in 10 days. The Magnus Carlsen interview from this event did like 400K. Hikaru and Alireza did, 300, 100K. And you can see here, like, even the official channel had a lot of views, 227. Listen, the Piers Morgan interview had 215. I mean, we're talking about, this is the biggest Hans interview we have yet. So, this kind of stuff is really fascinating because most sports are, first of all, team sports, right? Team sporting events. And there's that whole element of it. Individual sports very rarely get high-intensity interviews where the interviewee might argue with the person who's interviewing them or might be making very pointed statements, because a lot of top athletes just get like tons of PR training and they say like, well, I couldn't have done it without my team, and I gotta thank my team, and I gotta thank this person and that, and we're just trying to do our best. And Hans, he went right into it, and I said he stated that I am a chess.com sponsored propaganda voice. I'm paraphrasing. And I was like, oh, wow, like we're just getting right into it. And that was kind of fascinating because that's not what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting it to be so pointed. And I don't have anything to hide. Hans had mentioned that I had streamed on Hikaru's channel in 2020 and 2021. OG chess fans, like pre-pandemic and early pandemic, remember those days. It was Hikaru playing in the Champions Chess Tour, the Meltwater, whatever they were called, and I would commentate on his channel. But I also didn't understand what that had to do with the issue at hand. I guess it was mostly a question of, can I cover the cheating scandal and Hikaru's actions and chess.com's actions in an unbiased fashion? One thing that totally slipped my mind, by the way, during the interview, Hans at some point said he had like 2,000 viewers or something, and I had like 50. This was maybe 2019, 2020. And what totally slipped my mind is around that time, I think he was like quite literally working with chess.com to improve his streaming presence. Like I had no recollection because I didn't stream much in 2019 and 2020. And then I came back, like, obviously during COVID, and then all those online tournaments happened. But I was like, wait, I thought he like was streaming on chess.com all the time. In fact, like the nexus of all of these, the whole report and everything was like, I cheated online in meaningless games. That's what he was saying. And it was like, maybe to boost his rating, to play the other players. I don't exactly know. But regardless, I was mildly blindsided by the level of the vitriol. But here's what I couldn't shake off, and I actually said this to him in the interview. I was like, I thought we were cool. Like, I thought we were cool. We had a couple of pretty normal interactions leading up to this point, and I did say in the interview at some point, Hans even was in one of my live streams and said, oh, we don't have any problems. I've only got problems with Hikaru. Paraphrasing. And I was like, okay, cool, because I don't really need problems with anybody, except Andrea Botes, but that's a separate issue. Even that is not serious. And yeah, I was like, oh, okay. And he said he was trolling me, and we did have beef. And so there is a sport, WWE, and there's a sport in the UFC. And in those sports, it's well known that sometimes athletes turn it on for the cameras, even though behind the scenes they might be pretty chill. I'm still trying to exactly pinpoint whether that whole interview was a work. And if it was, I'm not going to tell you, okay? Because that's the magic of it, all right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, he's actually a sweetheart behind the scenes. He wasn't a sweetheart, but he wasn't like, he wasn't that guy. You know what I mean? Like, and then the last thing, obviously, we talked a lot about the chess.com report. I have nothing to add. I have nothing to say. They published the report. He disputes parts of the report and says it's got mistakes in it. And there was a huge lawsuit, and ultimately that was that. Now, one thing he also said in the interview was, I don't care about Hikaru. I also didn't fully process this until later. He said, I don't care about Hikaru. I want Hikaru to be old, retired in a old folks home, and I'm still gonna be winning, and he's gonna have to watch me win, and there's nothing he can do about it. So I made a joke to him because I was like, so you're gonna be 70 years old winning? Because they're 10, 15 years apart. If Hikaru's 80, Hans is 65. He's not winning anything at 65. But also, I had this thought after. I was like, wait, but he doesn't want to beat Hikaru. He wants Hikaru to retire and watch him win things. And I just kind of was like, wait a minute. Wouldn't an elite alpha athlete want to dominate a fellow athlete as opposed to yeah, let that guy leave and then, I'm just going to keep winning stuff. So there was a couple of things where I left the interview, was like, wait a minute, what did he say? I didn't quite get it. But then there was the event, and ultimately I left that interview like, wow, that was a lot. Wow, that's not what I was expecting. But listen, it's kind of the name of the game. Look at the numbers that interview did. And I would say what that interview did was leave people with a couple of final impressions. Number one, some people were critical of my interview skills, and they said I was too combative. I did this, I did that. Some of that is actually accurate, and I would listen to some of that feedback. The problem is I'm not a journalist, and I'm not an interviewer in that setting. I'm a feel-good interviewer. I want to talk to somebody for 20 minutes, crack some jokes, make them do some fun things, create some cool content, make it interesting for you guys. I don't want to argue with someone for 45 minutes on an interview. I have better things to do. And I ultimately, at some point, I got fed up, but I did kind of keep my cool. I didn't, people were messaging me like, how did you not punch Hans? And I was like, what does that even, what, I'm just gonna sucker punch him? What? It's not like he was attacking my family or something, all right? I got a few texts like that. So that was a little bit of an overreaction, but that was part of the feedback. The other part of the feedback was people who supported Hans and were giving him the benefit of the doubt in the whole thing were, they were changing their mind. I think that interview actually tilted things not in his direction. But then there was the results, right? And then there was this interview. There was that interview, and if he had won against Magnus or he had won against Hikaru or whatever the second match would have been, it would have been crazy. But then he gave this interview. This was the one after losing to Hikaru. And here, I think, he did what a person that loses is supposed to do, especially a person that talks a big game and loses. And I don't know how many people, there's a pretty big view discrepancy here, right? And people will not want to give him the benefit of the doubt after seeing the first interview. But in my opinion, he lost the way a person should lose if that is, if they are that kind of personality. Now, again, the biggest mystery to me is I have no idea if the whole thing's a personality thing, or if he's really like that. If he's really like that, he's not very nice. But maybe that is something in your mind that has to be flipped, and you don't have to be very nice, but you have this killer instinct, and you're going to become a 2800 level player. I don't know. But I don't know which of the two theories I subscribe to. And listen, I get it. Like I said, I have talked about it quite openly. I thought my coverage of him was quite fair compared to some other folks who I will not name because I've named them before. But I didn't participate in this whole witch hunt early on in 2022 of dissecting all his games and claiming that I think something is off. Because that's not my job. That was not my role ever. Yeah, I guess he still felt like, I was a part of the machine that was working against him somehow. But I thought I did a pretty nice job covering him. But I still do get comments like, you were part of you and Hikaru ruined his life. And I was like, I don't think so. I think we did quite separate things, actually. And, you know, but that's Hans. That's Hans. And he came up short, but very curious to see where he goes from here. And what his next results are. He did say Kramnik is his life coach. By the way, speaking of, we will talk about Kramnik right now. Kramnik is now with the Olympiad coaching the Uzbek team. What I find fascinating about Kramnik, you know, with all his Clash of Claims stuff, like how he played against Jose, then he played a second edition of the match. I don't know if any of you saw this. He played something called Clash of Blames, which originally they tried to call Clash of Claims 2. Nobody was involved in it who was involved in Clash of Claims 1, except the players. The chess world is like ridiculous. I don't know how they just thought that they could copy the exact same name and exact same concept. And it was played on a totally different website. It was played on some sort of online arena run by the international governing body of the game. I don't exactly know. But Vladimir Kramnik himself is the fair play officer of that new chess company. And their whole thing is, it is the fairest place to play chess. And then there were Reddit threads of people claiming they've been cheating on the website for months and not getting banned. You can go down this rabbit hole if you like. My point is, I have no idea what Vladimir Kramnik is up to. Ever since the Hikaru stuff, the big crusade of the anti-cheating, Clash of Claims 1, then he played the second edition against Jose. That one he won by a game. Like, it was very close, or 2 games. So he had some things to say, and he's apparently coaching Hans now. And Hans offered me a training camp with him and Kramnik, and I have to pay them each $100,000. Technically, I think it expired, but you know, maybe if I offered them the cash, they would do it. So this is what Kramnik said about Hikaru. He said, this match played, that's tongue-in-cheek, under unfair conditions for Hikaru, far away from the comfortable chair at home. Congratulations to Firouzja, someone breaking all normal chess.com standards, being the same level player over the board, online from home, online under surveillance, unique nowadays. Look, yeah, Kramnik basically continued the narrative, and he's even turned it up a notch in just straight up accusing Hikaru of cheating. He just keeps doing it. I don't even... And the craziest thing is, like, then in the match against Hans, he said, you know, there's something more important than mastery of chess. It's the mastery of your emotions. And he said that Hikaru did not play well against Hans in the 5+1 segment. But then he, you know, he beat him a few times in the 3-minute, and Hans, you know, tilted. And, yeah. See? Hikaru losing, I told you he's cheating, he's winning, I told you. Like, and the craziest thing now about Kramnik, besides being apparently Hans's life coach, is he's coaching the Uzbekistan team for the Olympiad. I just find the whole thing wild, that he's obviously unbelievably well respected for his chess accomplishments, and there is a level of, like, separate the art from the artist, separate the person from the artist. There is an element of that. Like, you have to respect all his contributions to chess and probably his ability as a trainer as well. It's so wild to me, though, that you could just go online and accuse like 50 different people of cheating, maybe even more at this point. And the community's like, what's up, man? Hey! It just, I think, yeah, maybe it's chess players. Maybe it's just, in general, people are just so unbelievably fake, like, to each other's face. Like, but I don't know. I can't really handle it. I don't know. I sort of wear my heart on my sleeve, and I don't know how these people all coexist in the same room when, you know, they go home and, you know, they talk, then they write whatever they want on social media. But Kramnik's got a wild trajectory. I have no idea what's next, but that's Hans and Kramnik. And now I would just like to give you some thoughts about the results of the overall event, and then the live venue and what this means for the future of, like, sports, for chess and esports. So Magnus was unbelievable. You almost start wondering, like, it's a shame Hikaru lost in the semifinal to Firouzja, because an informed Hikaru, a motivated Hikaru, would have been given him a better fight than Firouzja did in the final and Hans did in the semis. Firouzja lost to Magnus by 16 points, which was crazy. And he tilted like an hour into the match, if even. He tilted in game 6, and then they had to play 24 more games. So he lost game 6 and literally immediately totally fell apart. He took a 1-game lead in the early portion, then Magnus tied it up. And then they had this really, odd game where Firouzja was just like crushing in the opening and then didn't, just allowed a lot of counterplay and ended up losing the game. He couldn't recover from that. And he didn't play his best, and Magnus was just in quite good form. Hikaru losing to Firouzja in the semifinal is definitely a big story. Firouzja was very sharp, clearly very motivated. But it's unclear what it means. I mean, Hikaru, in a lot of interviews now, is talking about his age. He's talking about some motivation stuff, and you really never know, because then he showed up to the bronze medal match and played a fantastic match against Hans. So it's unclear, but you do somehow get the sense Hikaru does have a foot out the door, maybe like half a foot out the door. He's, turning 37 this year. That's older when it comes to top players, and yet he's top 3 in the world in classical still, and he's quite good and strong still in rapid and blitz. So we'll see what it means. But obviously, the chess world will definitely be less interesting if Hikaru chooses to retire. Hopefully, he's got a couple of years remaining. Firouzja had a monster year. We'll see if he can continue playing well, like in the candidates, for example, and the next candidate cycle. Same with Hans. I mean, we're gonna see if this kind of carries over to classical over the board chess. And listen, I'm going to have to probably interview him at future events. So I doubt the next edition is going to be that exciting, but I think we've sort of turned a page in the Hans Niemann thing. Although then this was announced. And this is the last thing I'm going to pan over here to. This was announced that they're going to do there's going to be a new Untold series on Netflix, which is behind the scenes sports documentary stuff. Very cool stuff. I've seen a couple of episodes. I saw one about Jake Paul. There's me responding to get attention. And there's going to be the chess grandmaster cheating scandal. So it's going to be Magnus and Hans. Pretty wild. So I don't know if I'm going to make an appearance in that, but crazy. Absolutely crazy stuff. Maybe we're going to get a whole bunch of new perspective that we haven't been given yet. So, yeah, I think we've turned a page for now until the Untold comes out, and then maybe it generates a bunch of excitement. Last but not least, this was the first ever live event with this many chess fans, I think, in attendance. There was fans in the arena. This is what it looked like. It was at Espont, which is a very cool venue. It's got different rooms and locations. This is the arena. The players played here. Normally they have, a row of 5 because it's esports. On the opposite side of this, which you cannot see here, they have like where my cursor is, they have seating. So there was people who could sit here. The most difficult thing there was the fact that if the players in the arena had an evaluation bar, they would be able to react. They would see the bar and go, and then the players in the next would go, oh, I can hear the crowd is getting restless, so I have something. And that's the struggle about chess. Maybe the only way to mitigate this when the audience has more information than the chess players is to put the players like this, but in a big glass box, which is soundproof. And apparently this has been done before, where the players sit, there's a glass, you can see the players, but the players cannot see you, and the fans can be as loud as possible, cheering, and they see the players there. And maybe that's the way to do it, and then the audience can get a live commentary, like, in the ear. Like they have silent raves, you have headphones, but there's music playing, so everybody's dancing, but it's silent. So maybe that's one way to do it. There was about 300-400 people there. I met a bunch of people, took a bunch of pictures with people, signed stuff for people, and it was quite special. It was quite cool, and a lot of people were very nice. I do wonder if we can sell 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 for some of the elite players of the world. I'm really hopeful. I'm really hopeful because I think chess can easily, grow to an esport like 30% the size of some of the biggest esports in the world. I would hope, but we have to get there. And there were problems, there were problems, even though Hans said we have non-disparagement agreements with chess.com or something along those lines. But yeah, like the events page was lagging at some points. There were some broadcast issues. There were little things that I would change about like player walkouts or the crowd, elements of the crowd and things like that. But that's all stuff that gets solved over time. And these are kind of like the early additions, and I'm staying positive and optimistic that these things can be mitigated. But eSpot was super cool. Chess as an esport is a fascinating phenomenon, and hopefully more things are coming in the future. More big brand collabs. Like there was no big brand title sponsor for Speed Chess Championship. I know they partnered with like Displate. That was a big one, but why does chess not have a watch sponsor? Watch companies, Tissot, Cytec, Casio, Rolex. Hit us up, man. I mean, the clock is like integral to the game. How do we not have a watch sponsor? We need bigger sponsorships in chess. And that's what I'm hoping that, some of these things can ultimately lead to. But a wild time in Paris it was. The Hans Niemann interview. Don't know if it's kayfabe. If you don't know what kayfabe is, I will... Kayfabe is the fact or convention of presenting staged performances as genuine or authentic. I don't know how much of it is kayfabe. I don't know how much of it is real. And I don't know what the future holds, because now that Hans lost up Magnus and Hikaru and gave that interview where he had a kind of refreshing, new and humble perspective, we'll see if it carries on, or we'll see if he rattles off a few wins and says, I'm back, baby. Hans Niemann is back. I can't wait for the next interview, because it's going to be a wild one. So those are my perspectives. And the chess world keeps on chugging along. Get out of here.